Welcome to the Sessions with Sessions podcast. I'm your host John, and we're a group of riders from up in Sudbury, Ontario. Talk about riding, talk about fat biking. Last week, talked about trainers in the upcoming race series we have going on. And today we're back to talking about regular biking, just regular everyday fat biking. So today I got, how's it going, guys?
It's good. It's really good today.
We got Professor Beavers here.
Yeah. How's it going, everyone?
And we got Mr. Evan Lowe.
How's it going?
So today, guys, episode number 30. We're into a whole new bunch of numbers. Into the big 30. That's a pretty big one, guys. It's kind of cool. It keeps going and going and going. Today, we're going to be talking about fat bike tires specifically. Before we do that, we do want to get in. We do have some questions. So as always, guys, we put it out there to you guys, usually the day before we do our podcast. So if you're just listening to this on YouTube or finding us on whatever your podcast app is, just make sure you follow us. You can follow the SOP, Sessions Ride, and usually we're posting through there on our story when we have questions, and reach out to us. Otherwise, if you comment on any of this, any of the YouTube videos, or if you commented on any of the Facebook posts, we'll get to that question too, but it's a little easier if you just get to the story. So, first question here, we've got from Chuck D7000. We've got, what would be the hardest product to purchase in the next year?
That's a good question for you, John, because I don't actually see the supply chain side.
Anything. Anything. So we're placing order for 2024 right now. I'm almost in that, and there will be a podcast about this, but I'm almost thinking 2022 may be a leap year from some companies. So I honestly think some things may not show up. Like it just... Some things 2022 may become 2023.
Wasn't SRAM saying they had like a bunch of stuff in stock over in their
this is Cycling Tips podcast. They were saying they've got the stuff, but try getting it.
They can't get it.
Best of luck, man. Try getting a car right now. Try getting a toaster. Like it doesn't matter. Like everything is so backed up. I think the big takeaway, if I was going to give you one sentence, it's basically anyone who tells you any accurate ETA is totally full of shit. There is no accurate ETAs. No one has any idea what's going on, and no one has any idea when stuff's coming into stock. So best advice I can give you is if you see something in stock and you want it, you should buy it.
Yeah.
There's no
don't wait this time.
No. Like my tires have a little bit left on them. Maybe I can go half a season to the tires. No, absolutely not. If there's tires you need, you get them.
Just to go off that, I actually bought a summer tire just last week.
Yeah, just in case.
Better
to have and not need than need and not have, man.
No, my rear tire is pretty done, and I needed that, and so I made sure that happened before the wall of tires disappeared to no tires.
It's been disappearing all winter. That's the funny thing. We were talking about that today. I went to the guys and I was like, "Okay, it's time to condense the tire wall." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, we sold some tires off it, and so it's time to condense it." And what? We said, "Dude, it's January." I'm like, "I don't know. I don't have a good answer." But they definitely need to condense the tire wall now. So anyways, that's a quick and easy one there. On to the next question here. I've got 46 North Brewing. What is the best 46 North beer selection to pair with podcasting? Well, this is awkward because I'm literally drinking a 46 North beer right now that I picked up earlier today. I recommend the Nigel Ashley. Is what I recommend specifically for podcasting. The Certified Beer Podcasters in Sudbury.
Perfect. I really like Yard Bard, their APA.
It's really good.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorites, to be honest.
Did you try any of the stouts that came out over Christmas?
I didn't get there. I've had the Manskirt before.
Manskirt's awesome, but they just came out with two new ones. It was like a collab with Ripe. They did a chocolate stout and an imperial stout. 10 out of 10.
Yeah? Okay, I'll get there this weekend and see if there's anything left, because I do love a good stout especially after a cold winter ride. Nothing beats a stout.
A stout. Evan?
I'll take recommendations.
Okay. I have we have two more questions here. I've got Mr. Sean Browse. Is it true that if you don't use it, you will lose it?
Of course, I think that's true.
Evan?
100%.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sean.
I don't even know if that could apply to almost anything we talk about and things we don't talk about on this podcast.
Yep. No, it could definitely apply.
Look, if I miss a day of training, I'm so far behind.
We have a last question here, if I can find it. I did just see it come through. Hold on.
And since I don't train in Zwift, that means I'm really far behind. Just so everyone's
super far behind.
Just so we're clear on that.
You're not that far behind.
All right, hold on here 1 more second, guys. Doesn't matter, I'm going to cut this anyways.
All right, perfect.
Well, if you're going to cut it, I'm going to have a sip. See if I can't spill it.
Yeah, good. Keep that in your mouth.
There we go. Back at the adult table.
Nice. Well done.
So I've got a last question here from Mr. John Bernetti, long-time listener, first-time asker. He's wondering why we haven't seen John Bernetti on the podcast this last while.
Well, only John Bernetti could answer that question. I think it might have to do with his schedule.
It might be a schedule. It might also be that we sometimes need to tone it down a notch. You know, like I find too much Bernetti. There's definitely a ceiling with how much Bernetti you can have around, and we unfortunately have almost maximized that ceiling this year already.
Yeah.
So we need to ration how much Bernetti we can have for the rest of the year. So we've had to kind of take it down a notch, just for
a bit.
Yeah, for probably about 11 months. So we'll have him back on. Don't worry, Mr. Bernetti. We will have Mr. Bernetti back on here. But in the meantime, it's just us three.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Stuck with us.
Into the conversation today. So this all kind of spawns off of actually a question we got last week, a little late on the podcast. We would already recorded and we got a question. Someone was asking about fat bike tires. They were asking about tubeless. They were asking about different kinds of tires. That's no problem. That's an easy one for us to get to.
Yeah.
An important thing for us to note here before we do start, guys, is we did do a podcast very similar to this last year. Now, if there's something we missed this time, or you hear us talk about this, like, hey, listen, I listened to an hour of them talking about fat bike tires. I need more. You can listen to our hour-long podcast that we had with probably 5 or 6 people last time when we were doing larger podcasts, and we all talk about fat bike tires then too, because we really love talking about fat bike tires.
We must.
Maybe in the show notes you could just reference that episode.
I will. I'll reference the episode, and everyone can go
Link
back
it.
and double up. Maybe I'll even add that to the YouTube channel back to back, so people can like double up on their tire knowledge. First thing I guess to note, guys, when this podcast comes out, I'm hoping that this doesn't become a self-fulfilling prophecy, but at this point there is fat bike tires in stock. There is. So if you this is an important topic. Generally speaking, whenever we're talking about stuff, and you're going to see this is a common theme for this year when we're talking about items, there's always going to be shortages and stuff. Right now, generally speaking, you can find tires. You can find studded tires if you look far enough, not just here at Sessions, but at other stores. They do have access. You can find wide tires. You can find narrow tires. You can find all sorts of different stuff. We'll be able to touch on kind of some more funny availability stuff later, but these things exist, so this makes it a little more interesting topic to talk about, because these are things we can actually put our hands on.
And different versions of it, right? So
and different versions, right? So I guess we'll start here. Professor Beavers, what tires are you running on your bike right now?
Well, I just upgraded, so I'm super
upgrades.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this, and I rode them last weekend. With maybe a little too much pressure, and then rode them on Sunday again with like really good pressure, and it was super fun. And so up front I have a Snow Avalanche, V tire Snow Avalanche, and in the back I have a V tire Snowshoe XL, and they're both studded, which is pretty awesome.
Super wide, dude.
Yeah, super 4.8s. Which I'm sure we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about.
That's going to be the first
so
thing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that and why. But yeah, so those are the new tires I'm just running, and super amazing. So
awesome. Tubeless?
No.
Okay.
But I will. I got some. I think that's kind of the next step.
That's the next
and
step.
I'll tell you why.
We're going to talk about that
later.
Mr. Evan Lowe?
Dillinger 5 studded front and back.
Dillinger 5 26s?
Yeah.
Tubeless?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm on Dillinger 4 studded 27.5, so 4.0 tires. Set up tubeless right now. Yeah. So far, so good. So, I guess the first kind of point of conversation here, guys, is tire size. Now, tire size, of course, tires come in 2 different sizes. They come in widths and they come in lengths, or widths and diameters, right?
Yeah.
Now, we're going to talk about diameters, but before we talk about diameters, what do you guys think about widths?
Well, like this is one of those things that I think is really dependent on what is the purpose for this bike, right? So we right now, and most of you who are probably listening to this, you're riding this fat bike in winter. And so I think, when we talk about width, like you really want to consider, what am I doing with this thing? So if you're riding trails in summer, width is going to be drastically different than if you're using this strictly on like snow and beaches or whatever, and sand, right? So we're riding snow. So for me, at like around 200 pounds, I've always ridden, like I had 4.7s beforehand. I got 4.8s now, and float is it's huge, right? It's going to be really important to making sure that I don't sink into the snow too far, and can actually go somewhere and roll somewhere. So my fat bike is pretty dedicated to winter riding. I ride it a little bit, or I have ridden it like a little bit in, say, like campgrounds and things like that, as like kind of just a get around bike. But I don't think I'll be doing that anymore with the studded tires on it. So it'll just be a winter machine, and lots of float.
Yeah,
for
nice
me,
and wide.
I'm bigger, right?
How about you, Evan?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I only ride mine in the winter. I have the 4.8s, and keeping them, like paying attention to what kind of conditions are out there, and putting in or taking out air, just to maximize the float and traction at the same time. It's kind of like a trade-off. So yeah, I mean, as far as tire widths are concerned, if you're really only riding snow, I think wider would be better. It's kind of like the same idea as a snowshoe, really.
It really is. That's something I was going to say, is you got to think about it like a snowshoe, guys. So your actual footprint, as far as if you were to take your bike and kind of drop it into the snow, that's something you need to take into consideration. So a lot of guys, a lot of people now, you see bikes like the Treks, even the new Da Vincis, Salsas are coming 27.5, and the conversation keeps becoming, is it 27.5 or is it 26? If I'm being honest with you, those numbers don't really matter. It's more about the width than it is about the length, than it is about the diameter. Sorry, it's about how much footprint you get on the ground. And the last year, the conversation was, they're only as good as the tires are that you can get for them. So you couldn't get a good 27.5 by 4.5 or wider tire. You just couldn't. So therefore 27.5 is a useless tire size, right? Like, even though it'd be like on a mountain bike, like we all know 29s are faster than 27s, but if you could only get a 29 and a 1.9 tire, like everyone would ride 27s, right? The tire companies weren't supporting it fully, but now we are starting to see a lot more support for 27. We are starting to see that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, generally speaking, consensus is running a wider tire is kind of what you want to be after.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. I think that then the only things that kind of play around with that are like your particular size, right? I mean, like you get away with a little bit lower diameter.
Not yet.
Or
we're gonna
not
find
diameter,
out.
sorry, but width.
We're gonna find
right?
out.
Oh yeah,
That's the kick. So for me, I was on 4.8s 2 years ago. Last year I went to a 4.2. Strictly because of availability. And last year was a good year for that, though. The temperature went up and down all the time. It was not a very heavy snowfall year. So honestly, I just made it work. This year, so what had happened was the Da Vinci Minus last year was the 26er bike. This year's a 27. We had one show up at the shop. I took the 27 wheel off the back and I slapped it on my bike to see if it would fit. And it kind of fit. With that said, though, I have realized now that the new rear end for the Da Vinci Minuses has gotten longer. They didn't say they changed the frame, but they did. They changed the frame. It's a little longer rear triangle. So I'm only able to fit about a 4.0. I've got an 80 wide rim, so I don't have, if I go any wider, it's also going to bulb out top-wise, and I'm going to start hitting the studs against the frame. So a 4.0 is the widest I can fit on 27s, and it remains to be seen whether or not it'll actually work out. I mean, like last week, it was very cold. We had medium snowfall earlier in that week, and we were going through some soft stuff, and it was unrideable, totally unrideable. So we'll see as things start to get more heavy pack. But generally speaking, especially up here, now you got to keep in mind too, guys, to anyone listening, we're talking about Sudbury. Sudbury's a different kind of terrain, and we generally speaking demand a wider tire, I would say, right?
I think so.
If you want to explain to people, maybe haven't like the difference between maybe Sudbury snow and trails versus maybe down south or anything everyone else might be experiencing elsewhere.
Well, I would say probably up here, we're generally colder, so our snow packs better. Anytime I've ridden down south in the snow, like last year I went down to the Durham trails, they weren't, like, there's a different consistency in the snow. It's almost more moist, and so it tends to mush a bit more. And so your traction is different. Like here, you can, once the trails are packed, you can ride pretty high pressure, whereas you can't get away with that down south. You have to always be like 3.5 to 5. Sometimes up here we can go 10, 12 if it's been cold and we haven't had a lot of snow and the trails have been ridden for a while. So
yeah, it's kind of turns into ice, right?
Yeah.
But the snow that we do get, I do find that the snow we get, when we get it, it's kind of loose and soft, right? Because if you imagine wet snow, easy to pack, soft snow, or like very, very cold snow, it doesn't hold together the same way.
No.
Yeah. And when it doesn't, I find the trails, like if we get a year with a lot of snow, we may have a hard time packing that snow in. And it's funny, I had a conversation with my friends that live in Quebec, the guys from Lama Cycles, and we were talking about tires, and they were saying, oh, well, it's just because you guys haven't quite figured out how to groom yet. Like, once you guys really figure out how to groom, it'll change everything. And I mean, we put a lot of effort into grooming, and we've done a lot of work now, and I think, honestly, it really is a climate thing. And we're seeing up here, like, a demand for a more aggressive tire and a demand for a wider tire, and it's not really a speed focus as it is, being able to get out and ride, being able to get out and get traction. I don't think anyone here is really asking for a faster rolling tire. Everyone's kind of asking for more float and more paddles, basically.
Yeah.
So, moving on from width, so the generally speaking consensus is, guys, bigger than 4.5.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'd say.
Bigger than 4.5. 26 or 27, you. Honestly, jury's kind of out so far. I could say just on like past experiences, seeing 27 and 29 go up and seeing 27 versus 26, like bigger wheels, generally speaking, are faster. You are getting a bigger footprint that way too. If you can get a 27 by 4.5, that's probably your best bet, as long as you get standover clearance. But yeah, I mean, bigger wheels, bigger tires. So going on from there, guys, so now if you're looking for a new set of tires, let's say your tire came on your bike, you're not quite sure about it, maybe you didn't have enough tread, or maybe you're not sure about the tire, what are you looking for in a tire? Like if you're walking into a shop and you want to change your tires, what's something you're going to ask that person or talk to that person about and say, hey, listen, like, what do you want in a tire? Like, how would someone know what tire to buy?
Do you want to, like, studs? Do you want to talk about studs first?
Let's talk about studs after.
Okay, let's talk about compound.
Sure, we can talk about compounds, tread patterns.
Yeah. So like with compounds, I think, because one thing that like a lot of companies put out there, like, well, we made this with this compound or that compound. And what you're looking for is something maybe that's a little more winter specific, so maybe a little more pliable than what you might think. Unless you're a true, real downhill rider, then maybe you've got a real soft tire in your summer ride as well. But you may want something that's a little more pliable than what's on your mountain bike. Or in a winter specific compound. So like the tires that I have, they call it a silica compound or SC, and it's basically borrowed from their winter tire technology. And so it runs at like a 57A durometer. I did my durometer research, and it's really hard to find all the durometer ratings for different tires sometimes.
So explain durometer rating.
So that's the hardness of the rubber. So basically, like a softer rubber is a lower number, and then it goes from like 0, A, and D. And so those are like, A is pretty much all tires. You're not going to get a 0 or a D so much. And then like anything like say a 44 would be like your softest like downhill race tire, like downhill bike tire, like in a summer scenario. And then you'd go up to like say like a 65, 70 or something maybe on like on a road bike.
No way. Okay, so yours is a what?
Mine's 52.
52. So a soft tire.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Did you do that research? There?
I did not
You know
do
your
that research,
what is it called? Your durometer?
Durometer.
Do you know your durometer?
I
And
just know
like
you want
all
softer in
the
the
all the
winter.
skateboarders out there will know that,
Fuck.
right? Because like
Yeah,
the
they
durometer
do.
on the wheels.
100% they do.
Right?
It's for skateboard
It
wheels.
is skateboard wheels.
Oh my god! I didn't even
Yeah.
think about that. I didn't put that
Same-
together.
Same
No
thing.
wonder we call you Professor.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And like, but Maxxis, the one thing about Maxxis is they don't publish their durometer anymore. That's the research I did, and so instead you have to kind of guess. They use words like max terra, max grip,
Yeah.
and max speed, and I'm assuming that's somewhere in like the 40s for the max grip, in the 50s for the max terra, and in the 65s ish for the max speed. But I don't know. They don't say.
No way. Okay. So that's kind of cool. So the actual hardness of the compounds, which does make sense. I mean, we with the fat bike tire, we do need a softer compound. You want something that can really conform to the rubber, to conform to the ground, something that can kind of bulb out. And we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute. But that does make a lot of sense, right? So an important thing, and of course, I'm imagining the softer rubbers on the fat bike tires, maybe a little more expensive, something that's a little less pliable, a little cheaper. Oftentimes, honestly, what comes stock on a bike is probably going to be the opposite tire there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Evan, you know TPI. You have any idea? That's another number that comes in the side of tires.
Yeah, no, I didn't really get into TPI
No?
at all.
It's TPI threads per inch. So that's on your sidewall, your tire, or actually all throughout the tire. It's how many threads are inside the tire. And I think that does go alongside what you were saying with
does.
duometer.
Yeah.
Because the TPI on your tires, if you have more threads per inch, you require less rubber,
Yeah.
right? You require less material in there because the threads are doing the work as opposed to the rubber itself. A lower TPI, generally speaking, means a stiffer tire because the tire is going to have a lot more just straight up rubber in it. And I would imagine a higher duometer,
Yeah, probably.
right?
Yeah.
So-
And if you're running a higher thread count, it's going to be a lot lighter. So a higher TPI tires, you'll go into a shop and you'll see, like, grab that Johnny 5 there. What does that Johnny 5 have on it?
It's probably
That's a 120.
I bet
And
most of
then-
these are one.
No, I've got 60s too,
Did you?
for sure. That's a 120. So we've got two 120s here,
there
which
it
are
is.
high-end tires.
Yeah.
But you'll see 60 TPIs, you'll see 80 TPIs, you'll see those kinds of tires often. 120 TPI is kind of the gold standard if you can get there. It's a tire with a lot of threads running through the tire, which will make less rubber in the tire, makes it a little lighter, and then I'm assuming it means more.
Yeah, it conforms better, right? So
exactly.
it's going to mesh with the terrain. So the one thing with the TPI, the knock on it, right? The higher the number you get, a little less durable, right? It wears a little quicker. But I think in winter we can probably all agree. So this is where it's like, what am I using this for? So maybe I'm a summer guy and I want to ride my fat bike on some summer trails. 60 TPI makes a lot of sense. I don't want it to wear so quick. These are expensive tires. In the winter, we're running on snow. We're not wearing the tire the same way, right? Like
No.
there's so much less wear that a 120, you want to save the weight. And
Especially if you're
want
buying a studded
in the
tire,
wear.
right? Like if you're getting it in studded, you're
Yeah.
only using it in the winter. So
Yeah.
you probably... Now, the only caveat, I think, to that is... So if you're going to buy a studded tire, yes, you should buy 120 because you're only going to use it in the winter.
Yep.
And it's therefore going to be lighter. The studs are going to be heavy themselves. So
Yep.
it's a lighter weight stud.
sure.
A lighter weight tire. But it's more fucking expensive.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
It is a lot more.
But with
Right.
with a lower TPI, that would be better for tubeless or no?
It's same difference for tubeless. It's going to seat the same way. Where we really see lower TPI tires are budget, of course, budget-friendly stuff that comes stock on bikes, oftentimes lower TPIs. Beyond that, we're also seeing lower TPIs on like downhill tires. So mountain bike on the DH side, sometimes someone may request a 60 TPI tire or an 80 TPI tire if they're like prone to slashing tires, just because that the rubber will hold the tire together a little better. It'll be a little heavier, but it does make a little more sense that way.
Sure. Yeah, if you're going downhill all the time, you don't really need the weight savings maybe.
Speak for yourself.
might need
All
to
right, guys,
turn
we
the
had
volume down
a
little.
small technical difficulty there. It appears you guys weren't listening to us on the microphones. You were listening to us on my laptop mic. So, welcome back to Dream Audio.
Yeah, we hope the audio originally was okay.
Yeah, I'm going to play around with a little bit of editing stuff, playing with stuff.
Yeah, our voices are
We're going to play around with stuff a little bit and like try to get that audio to where it should be. But you should be able to hear us even better now. If you made it 25 minutes into this podcast, thank you so much. Here's better audio.
Don't rate us on the first half. The second half.
Oh, exactly.
That's where the good content is.
Exactly. So hey guys, that's TPIs. So for moving on from TPIs and dual, what do you call that again? What's that term again? Dual
like the compound or durometer.
Durometer. So moving on from durometers and TPIs. Now we've talked about tire sizes. Let's talk about studs real quick. So consensus first. Who here has studs?
I do now.
I also have studs.
And one of the reasons I'll let you know is like last year at the very beginning of the season, took a pretty decent wipeout just on stuff that like there was no reason to wipe out besides it was just glare ice, right?
Did you go riding with us like fucking, what is it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? When we were going up Mountain Street?
Yeah.
We almost got hit. Yeah,
Yep.
so like, that was a good example. So I didn't have studs last year at all. Okay, guys, I didn't have studs last year. And if I'm being honest, I think I kind of lucked out. Like, I think it was just a good year to not have studs. And what I've been telling people is, listen, guys, if it's a stud year, you can't ride if you don't have studs. It's just long and short of it. Like, if it's that year where everything's icy, if you don't have studs, you don't ride your bike. So if you want to ride your bike and you want to be 100% sure, just get studs early. That way you're not scrambling like everybody else. And it kind of that theory made sense, but I hadn't really tested that theory myself until we rode. So we had probably
A dozen.
12 guys.
Dozen people,
Right?
yeah.
This is before the COVID rules.
This was before Christmas.
Before Christmas, we were going from the shop. You head up towards Mountain Street, a little park up there, and we're climbing up the hill and we're kind of cruising. Everything was pretty. The middle of the middle of the trail had packed, pretty icy, and the sides had kind of come down a bit, so it was kind of curved.
Well, we'd had freeze thaw for a couple of days.
So we were I don't know, I was up front. We were just kind of moving. We weren't going at a crazy pace, but it was just moving. And I didn't really like with the studs on. I was laughing. I was like, this is kind of crazy. I couldn't believe I can just ride on the ice like I can now. It's cool. We're moving, and didn't really think much of it. We get to the top of the hill, heading towards the up to the park, and turn around and look, and we got about 4 guys with us now.
Yeah.
Where the hell is everybody? I didn't realize we had dropped a couple guys. And, I felt kind of bad, and I looked, and all the guys with us had studs.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. All the guys who didn't have studs, we looked back, and you could barely see them, and they're climbing up the hill, and they're all like they were just about on the verge of dying. All
Headlights
of them
are going
balancing.
crazy.
Yeah, and that like think tall look where they're all like super tall and they're like super tippy and then I think Brian was up front and Brian lost it and went down, took the guy out behind him, and everyone they all went down in the hill, and I was like, oh man, that's no good.
That was before I had studs. So literally that ride was like a white knuckle ride. Like every single moment of that ride was like it could happen right now. It could usually just go out and like. And the back trail behind the Burger King as well.
Yeah.
That was like, it was a gong show. I was like, every single second was just like, I'm going to hold on.
But there's no like, it's like catching an edge on the snowboard. Like if it goes, there's nothing you can do to stop it. No. Like there's no, I remember I rode at Brunetti and we were going up towards the lookout at Adanac. And there was this that ice that kind of glistens in the sun because it's kind of wet and like kind of melting a bit. That was across the trail up to the lookout. I remember looking at it and going, And Brunetti went up and he went right past it, and I didn't have studs, and I was like, I should be fine. Like I'm gonna get enough speed, go up to it, and I'm just gonna like coast past it, and I'm gonna like I'm gonna be straight, and I'm gonna be super straight, and I'm gonna go right over top of it. I hit that ice. I've never seen bike tires move that fast. Gone, man, gone. And I was ready for it. Like, there's no saving yourself. There's no nothing, man. Like, there's nothing slipperier than fat bike tires on ice. So yeah, I mean studs are key if it's the year. You can get away without them. I've seen guys. You just gotta be careful, guys. Like I've seen like Jean went down super hard. It was a season or two ago when we were just leaving the shop. We were going down the street. We took a left onto a side street, and there was a patch of ice on the road. He hit the patch of ice and went down. And
Yeah, he didn't even see it.
Didn't even see it. Like it's black on black, so it's impossible to see. So yeah, just gotta be super careful out there if you don't have studs, guys.
But honestly, studs are like if you're on the fence about them, they're good for shoulder season, right? So like when the freeze and thaw in the fall, early winter starts, and then when things start to melt and then they freeze like in March at the end of the season, like they just make it better to ride.
Absolutely.
You don't
More
have
fun.
so
More fun.
I mean either if you can have 2 sets of tires if you don't want to run studs all the time, but
they do
studs-
add up there in price
Yeah.
if you do that. But I'm with you. That's kind of where I'm at now too. Is I'm thinking about running 2 sets: a studded set on 27s and then a wide set on 26s. But yeah, no, I agree. It's Bernetti always says it's worth it to have just for the security. He said he rides without really needing to think about it. Right? You don't need to, you no longer need to think about ice if you have studs. So if you want that security, if you want them, it is a good thing to have. But I guess a good place to start is not all studs are equal.
Right.
You've got studs on your bike. Do you know what stud you have on your bike?
Yeah, I don't have the convex ones. I've got the pointy ones.
You've just got the straight, flat, pointy ones.
I have the entry level studs.
The entry level stud. How about you, Beavers?
I don't know which ones I have. To be
You have
honest.
entry level
I think I
pointy
have entry
studs.
level pointy
Yes, you do.
studs, yeah.
Yes. I don't. I've got fancy studs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys.
I'll tell you the
It's
one
all good.
thing about the entry level studs. Like I mean, I don't have any complaints about them, but putting my bike on and off my rack and having to push down that thing, I cut my hands all the time.
Yeah, they're sharp.
They're very
They're
sharp.
So 2 things before we start talking about studs here, guys. When you get a studded tire, do you know what you're supposed to do? Ride it on pavement. You're supposed to take your bike and you're supposed to ride your bike on pavement for like a click or 2. Not on pavement with snow on it, none of that. You go find yourself a piece of highway and run it on the highway. Reason for that, guys, is on your studded tire, they're all machine set studs. So there's no way to know that that stud is set totally flat. And if you go just ride it on a trail, you might rip one of the studs out. Studs do rip out as you're riding normally, but you might rip them out a lot faster. So run that tire on a road first, just to make sure all the studs are sitting flat and where they should be. That's something that doesn't say on the side of the tire, but you should definitely do that. It says right on their thing.
Nobody
now-
wants to say that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We may not have set these right.
It says it right in their user manual, but it doesn't
Yeah.
say it on the tire.
Right.
But as far as the studs themselves, so we actually have one here. We have a Dillinger 4. This Dillinger 4 has the concave stud. So you'll notice a lot of companies will have something like this. Now, this Dillinger 4, the concave stud, is exactly as you could imagine. It's just concave through the middle. So the outer perimeter is sitting higher than the middle of the stud. Now, that will not only grip better, because you can imagine it's just more sharp points on the stud, but that will, it'll actually get sharper with time. As it starts to wear down, it wears the tire and actually puts more like dings and stuff into the stud, which makes it just kind of a sharper, pointier object.
Kind of short serrates it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a popular one. Also, Terrain makes theirs is like a triple crown stud on the high end, which is like a
Yep.
3-pointed stud. Very, very similar. But basically, the long and short of it, what I kind of want to get at is not all studs are equal. All studs work. However, sometimes you can find these concave studs or triple crown studs or whatever that will increase the price of the tire, but also give you just a little bit of extra grip. A lot of the less expensive studs, they will call lightweight studs or low resistance studs, which are just cheaper. It's a good way to make a good name for a cheap stud.
Right. There you go. Low resistance.
Yeah, and exactly what it is. It's just a smaller stud, but as Evan pointed out, like even having a more price point oriented stud still functions, right? It still functions. You still got your hand on
It's
it.
10
still
times the
ridiculous.
tire my other ones were.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Studs reasonably necessary. Have either of you ever tried studding a tire?
Nope.
I have not.
Oh my god.
It sounds like it would be a really time intensive.
So
Well, there's
Frank
like
did it?
240 studs. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank put. I want to say he put 400 studs into his tires the other day.
Sure.
It's a lot of work. Now stud patterns, there's a lot of stud patterns stuff you can find online. I recommend going in, out, just to get the inside and then the outside. You do want to make sure though that you get the outside studs. They're most important, right, for cornering. Right. If you get into a corner, it's also more important to have a studded tire on the front than on the back. So if you have more studs, put the more studs in the front. That does seem counterintuitive if you're thinking about it. Like, but my rear tire is where all the traction is. No, you want all your steering comes from the front. So you want to make sure that you have as much stud on the front as absolutely possible. But yeah, Frank it took him forever, and it was a lot. Some guys say, so if you are studding your own tires, you use this little stud tool here from 45. It's just basically a T-handled tool with a little socket on the end the stud fits into. If I can get this out.
It's going to look like a skateboard truck tool.
Yeah, like a mini one.
Yeah.
If anyone can see this on YouTube, that's basically all it is. Just a little T-handled tool. You put your stud in there and you just drive it in. Now, some people use soapy water and stuff. We don't really recommend soapy water because soap does stay as like a lubricant over time. I recommend, someone told me the other day, it makes a lot of sense to me, hand sanitizer. Right, hand sanitizer will dry out. You probably have to be a little bit careful with hand sanitizer on your tires because it will dry your tire out a bit. But like using something that'll dry out quick will definitely help. But you're gonna put like 500 studs in, so you're gonna need some kind of lubricant. The way the studs work is there's like a big flat part in the back, so you just kind of throw it through there, and the flat part kind of sticks against the tire, and it kind of sits inside there, nice and neat.
And you should, if you're doing that, you're buying a tire that has a hole pattern already in it.
So this Johnny 5 that you got here, it has like a million holes in it. It's got probably 250 holes.
Yeah.
But doesn't necessarily mean that you need to put 250 studs in it.
Yeah.
You can choose a pattern based on that. So you
you wouldn't try and put those studs into, say, like just any tire, like one that didn't have all that.
No. There is a couple companies that make like DIY studs,
right?
Where you screw them in. I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of. You have to self-tap it first, and then you have to screw it. Like that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's a lot of bike riding that you could be doing.
Right.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like, especially for the price of studded tires, and studded tires are expensive, guys. I'm not gonna beat around the bush about that. They can cost more than a car tire. We're talking $300 a tire for most of them. But how much is your time worth? That's really what it comes down to. Like, if you spend 5 hours studying your tires to save $100, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just depends on how much time you have. And some people enjoy that kind of stuff. And if you do, awesome, power to you, buy studdable tires. Studdable tires is also a good choice for someone who's not sure about studs. Maybe wants to get a new tire, their tires are worn out, they want to buy studdable tires so they can stud it in the future. That's a good way to do it too. Yeah. An important thing to remember with that is you're going to spend twice as long because you have to pick out all the rocks out of your tires. Frank had to go and pick out a rock out of every single hole on his tire.
Wow.
Yeah, because he rode it in the spring too, right? He had rocks in every single hole.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was a lot. And some of the stud holes were actually ripped a little bit. So, but beyond that, another thing about studded tires, if you do buy a studded tire, I do recommend you buy a replacement stud pack to go with it. Because you're going to lose a couple studs here and there. So if you lose a couple studs here and there, you get yourself a stud pack. You can kind of replace it as you go. Just expect to lose some. It is a normal thing. Don't get all up in arms because you lost a couple of studs. It's totally normal. You brake hard around a corner or something, you lose a stud. It's not a big deal. You just put another one in there. Anything to add, guys? Studded tires?
No, not the studded tires.
Well, the one thing, like, I did ride my bike for like 5 years without studded tires. And so when it was time to upgrade, and maybe this is where, like, if you say you've been riding for a while and you're like, oh, I'm going to get new tires, then maybe the difference in cost isn't as much as you might think. Like, it's still a bit more, yes, but it's not like you just got this new bike, you've got a brand new tire. You were going to need to replace your tire anyway because your traction was starting to wear down.
Absolutely.
You're not starting from zero.
Yeah.
The only unfortunate thing is it takes a million years to wear out a fat bike tire.
Right.
And that was a conversation we had with Todd, is because Todd got himself a set of Maxxis fat bike tires, and then he was like, I'm just going to wait for these to wear out, and then you get studs. And he's on them for like 3 years. And he's like, when are they going to wear out? Put them on a belt sander and just wear them out, you know?
Do skids in the
Which is, I
parking lot.
guess, why we can run 120 Tpi and never wear them out. Right? It doesn't matter. Snow doesn't wear the same.
So moving on from there, guys, let's talk quickly about Tubeless. So, tubeless is a hot topic with fat bikes. You're tubeless, Evan?
I am.
Did you tubeless your tires?
No, I did not. I don't have that kind of time.
Or that kind of expertise, right?
Yeah. How about you, Beavers? Are you tubeless?
I'm not tubeless, so
How come?
I don't know. I really So
You like flats?
No, okay. To be honest, though, here's the thing. I have never had a flat. I should never say this.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is great. Hey, Evan, you ever had a flat on a fat bike?
I've had
He
several.
has.
Yeah, when have you had a flat?
I think all three of them came in the same 5
Yeah,
minutes.
You've had more flat. You've had more than one flat in a single ride,
Yeah,
right?
I was with him when that happened.
Yeah.
But I rode that bike for a long time, never had a flat. So, but the reason I would actually go...
So what he's saying, Evan, is he did the same jump he did. He didn't get a flat. You got
True.
three.
I
True.
know.
But
Some people are just better at it.
Sounds
I
like a
guess.
you problem.
Yeah, it's totally a me problem. I don't think we've ever been denying that.
but here's why you may want to go tubeless. So and why I would think that this is my next upgrade is because a fat bike tube is somewhere between 400 and 500 grams. So if you take out 2 tubes, that's like 2 to 2.2 pounds. Think about how much money you would spend to save 2 pounds off your frame.
Yeah, a lot.
Or
And
how many
then-
holes you'd have to drill in it.
Yeah, it's a lot of holes.
And then just think about, I could just go tubeless.
You could,
and-
yeah, but you say it like that. Just you ever tubeless a fat bike tire?
No, I'm sorry. The things I did, the things that you need to tubeless fat bike tire, I'm sure we'll talk about all of this, is like a good bike tech.
Yeah. We're gonna
As
start
well
by
as-
a shop that knows how to tubeless fat bike tires.
And then some fatty strippers. And
I think this is
some
where we
other
And a
call
lot of
in our
time.
surprise guest.
In a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah, this is where we type of the surprise guest. We bring in Kevin here, who I've had gone downstairs many times. And our stack top is downstairs, guys, if you guys haven't known. But see Kevin screaming at a fat bike tire, yelling at it because he won't get fucking seated on the rim. Yeah, so here's the thing, guys. So 45 knots great, terrain's great, V-rubber's great. They make these good tires. These tires are definitely built to fit fat bike rims. They're definitely built to go tubeless. They're awesome. Guess what doesn't work? Rims. Rims are not tubeless ready. Doesn't matter how you say it. Doesn't matter to beat around the bush about it. Generally speaking, fat bikes are below $3,000, and generally speaking, bikes below $3,000 don't come with tubeless-sided rims. And generally speaking, it doesn't work as well as you might want it to. Now, the other thing to consider, if you've ever tubeless a road bike tire, it's pretty easy. You can basically breathe into the thing and tubeless it because it's not a lot of air in there. When you start getting a mountain bike tire, a little trickier, a little more air. Now, fat bike. How do you get that much air into a tire? So you do it with a compressor, but it doesn't always work. There's a lot of tips and tricks we use to get a tire seated on a rim. A lot of them involve ratchet straps, zip ties, extra tubes wrapped around tires, 3 to 5 people, lots of things like that, just to basically shimmy the tire around enough ways to keep the tire against the rim and seat it up. Now we do use these. Now you can tubeless a tire with this like fancy whiskey tape I've got here. It's wide enough for your rim. You make sure if you got a 100 mil rim that you use like a 70 mil tape, or sorry, an 80 to 90 mil tape. If you use an 80 mil rim, use a 70 mil tape. Something that's just a little narrower than your rim. Wrap it all the way around and hope for the absolute best. No guarantees. It may work, it may not. The honest to God truth, guys. We've had times that I've definitely gone to go do a fat bike tire, and we spend 2 hours on it, and we go, yep, that's gonna get a tube. So beyond using just a regular rim tape and trying to fight with it, we do oftentimes use what we call a fatty stripper. Now, a fatty stripper, use your safe search when Googling that. This guy here is basically just a latex strip that you run over top of your rim, and it'll bond with your tire. So this, over time, it'll actually create almost like a tubular. It'll bond to the tire and make a one-piece kind of like tire rim tape combo. This piece also, beyond just becoming a good liner for the tire, it absorbs a little bit of surface area. So when you wrap this around your rim, then go to mount your tire on top of it, it kind of increases the diameter of your rim a little bit, if you can think about it that way, and creates a tighter fit. It'll oftentimes save our bacon when we go put the tires on. We honestly, it's gotten to a point now where I just assume that we have to use these fatty strippers. If you do need them, we do have them. We have them in stock. We buy them in bulk from the supplier. If you want to buy them from the supplier and you're Googling it and you're looking them up, it is definitely that weird, sketchy looking. Yeah, you've looked. Right?
Yeah, it's like I was like, hey, this is interesting. But
yeah, it's like it's definitely like have some security on your credit card when you.
I'm 100% getting my identity stolen.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little sketchy, but I promise you, Jim from Fatty Strippers is a good guy. I've talked to the guy. He does good stuff, and the product. I mean, it's a funny thing that this doesn't exist in the bike industry widely, and I don't know how people tubeless. Like, I know a lot of shops will go and they'll put like whatever, 1.5 pounds of Gorilla Tape on each rim to get the thing to tubeless. That totally defeats what you were saying as far as weight savings.
Weight then, right?
Yeah, you're putting 2 pounds of freaking Gorilla Tape on your rim.
Why bother?
So fatty strip is a good way to go. Basically, all you do is you run your existing rim strip, you put this over top of that, and then just seal it, and then put the sealant into the valve after as you need. But the important thing to remember with these guys, it should drape over the sides of your rims, and then you're gonna let it bond, 24 to 48 hours. Then you're gonna cut the excess off. You can ride your bike in the meantime, but just let it set enough that it actually bonds to your tire and creates a tubular. If you go to take your tire off after, if you're careful, you can actually take it off and keep the fatty stripper intact. And if you happen to rip the fatty stripper, just put a new one on. They're like $7 a piece, but they definitely make your life a little easier. It is no guarantee though that it'll make your tire tubeless well. Like we've still had bad tubelessing tires even with that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
It took a bit to get mine to seat.
Yeah.
When we did ours.
Yeah, but now that it's heated, it's great, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
No issues at all. It even held the pressure over the summer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, it creates an amazing bond and a good seal. So going from there, guys, going to rims. We're going to talk about rims super quick. So rims, Vevers, how wide are your rims?
My rims are 80.
80?
And that's, I think, like fairly kind of standard-ish, although
80 is kind of the standard now,
Yeah, you'll see 100 as well. And then, like, if you're riding it in off seasons, you might see lower than 80, right?
Yeah.
But, and I guess the only thing that kind of like what I was kind of thinking about is that, like, so the wider the rim, they say, the more it's going to flatten out your tire, right? So if we're talking about having this tire contact with snow or whatever, right, you may want to go with a wider rim. But then the only thing to remember is, like, say your bike comes with an 80 rim, and then you go with like a slightly larger tire than your bike also came with, and suddenly you might flatten it out so much it no longer fits.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
you do want to make sure that whatever rim tire width combo you want to go with is actually going to fit in your tire.
Exactly.
Or in your triangle.
It's very important to note that tire widths that they put on the side of tires are very subjective. They're not accurate. They're totally all over the place, and it does depend on your rim width.
Yeah.
So like a 4.8 on an 80 mil rim and a 4.8 on a 100 mil rim, that 100 mil rim is going to make that tire sit a lot wider and a lot shallower. So if I'm running an 80 mil rim as well, it's making my tire kind of bulb out a little more, which I'm actually getting contact at the top of the rim, the top of the frame. So you just need to be aware kind of how your tire is bulbing and how it's moving in relation to your rims. Evan, what size rim are you on?
I'm pretty sure there are hundreds.
On wides.
Yeah. Yeah, and like that's the thing, like you were talking about with a narrower rim and a wider tire, like you want your tire, they always talk about the bulb at the bottom for your flotation and everything. It's a different kind of bulb, I guess. When you have a narrower rim and a wider tire, you don't want to have like that narrow rim and then the whole tire being round coming off of that.
Exactly. You kind of want it to be square coming off the rim, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an important thing to note. And I have had situations where we've had people come in with maybe 60 mil rims and they want to run a 4.8. And if you run a 4.8 on a 60 mil rim, it's going to be just a big circle.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out properly. You need to run, I would say if you're going to run a 4.8, you need at least an 80 mil rim. 80 mil is generally speaking the standard. When you run 100, don't get me wrong, 100 mil rims are great too. You do add a little bit of weight. You do get a little more float, a little more surface area. But if you run a 100 mil rim, you won't really be able to run a 4.0. If you run a 4.0, that's what Brunetti had done. He rode 4.0s on 100s, and they didn't work. It was like super squared off and weird. Those tires now on my bike, and I've got 80s, and they fit fine.
Yeah.
So anything else to add to rims, guys? We can move from there.
I think that was
Okay, so from rims, we're going to talk about tire pressure. Now, tire pressure is a huge point. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about tire pressure one day. The important thing that I think we need to take away here, guys, is you should know your tire pressure. And I should have here the tire pressure gauges. We did actually just get in some analog tire pressure gauges, which is super cool. You need to make sure your tire pressure gauge shows you below 10 psi.
Oh, for sure.
Because most bike
Decimals
pumps
are good too.
What's that?
Decimals are good too.
Yeah, decimals are great. Right? If you can see half psi, but any like regular bike pump usually starts at like 5 or 10 psi, and often in fat bike times we're going below 5. We're definitely going below 10. So digital is an amazing way to go. If you don't want to go digital for the battery, we just got these super sweet analog gauges in. They're like $30, and it's like you stick it on. It's a dial.
That's what I have.
They're incredible.
Yeah, the Pressure, I think it's called. Or whatever.
That's awesome.
It's like really nice. Yeah,
That's the trick.
super low pressure, and that's the thing. I even think like floor like your average bike pressure gauge, like it does starts at 5 or 10, but I don't know if it's really accurate until a little higher than that, because it's you need like a fat bike specific gauge to get those. Like you want to run 4 psi and know what that is. You want to have like.
So it's a good place to start. Ask your friends what they're riding. Look at what they're riding. Now the important thing to note here is when you're riding on the trails, you need to be. I think it's 3.8 or wider is what they require on the trails.
Right.
Beyond that, you want to make sure. What's the rule? Is if
you're leaving like a divot. Or like
divot's the good word. I actually have this little graphic here. I'm going to try to put it up, and it shows. It is minimum 3.8 for groom surfaces. It says incorrect and correct. Now, if you're grooving into the trail while you're riding, too much pressure. You want to run on a soft tires. You want to run like 1 to 4 psi. Harder surfaces 6 to 8. 8 being kind of the max.
Yeah.
You want to see. So, and it's important if you're riding behind somebody to let them know that in a nice way. But the tire should sit down, and then it should kind of bulb out at the bottom, right? It should kind of flatten out. It should almost look like someone's got a flat.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you imagine what someone with a flat tire looks like, it should kind of look like that. It should bulb out at the bottom. That's a tire pressure that not only is it going to be better for the rider because they're going to get a lot of engagement. They're going to have a lot of traction, but it doesn't damage the trails. Evan, you check your tire pressure before rides?
All the time, yeah. And like I was going to say when you were saying it looks like a flat tire, like if you're new to fat biking and you're checking your tire pressure, it's going to feel like you have a flat tire. Like, you push on it, it feels flat. It's like, oh, I don't think that's right. But it really is. And it's just about the volume of air. Like, compared to a mountain bike or a road bike, you would never think to run that low a pressure in either one of those two bikes. But on a fat bike, like 3.5, it still is a considerable amount of air, even though it looks like your tire's kind of flat.
Yeah.
But every ride I check, and even throughout the ride I'll check. Like if I'm getting, if I'm leaving ruts, or if I'm having a hard time steering, or if I'm having a hard time making climbs or whatever, then I'll either add air or take out air depending. Like I always carry a pump, and
we'll even often ride to, say like up the Boreal Hill, and then like drop pressure before we get on the actual trails.
That's
right?
a good test, right? Is we usually ride on the road for a minute, and then once you jump into the trail, like how many times did we let air pressure out in the last ride? Like I think we let pressure out like more often than we were riding. We're sitting there letting pressure out. It's important to not only communicate with your crew you're with, but everyone should lower their tire pressure in gauges, and like just slowly, like you start to find kind of your sweet spot, but don't be scared to let air out. You need to, especially if you're leaving ruts. Last thing you want to do is ruin the trail for somebody else. But if you're leaving ruts, if you're climbing a hill, you're just sliding. You're sliding and cutting into the trail and just digging holes. Like, you don't want to be that guy, and it's not making your ride any better.
No.
I always say, like with fat biking, the most important things are layering and tire pressure. Like even your bike quality doesn't matter as much as your tire pressure does.
Okay.
Right? You can have the world's best bike, and someone has a Canadian Tire fat bike, and if they have the tire pressure right and you don't, like you're having a bad time, and they're having a great time. Tire pressure is everything. Beyond that, I think also something can be said for bouncing. If you find yourself kind of bouncing,
You're
you
too
need
high.
to, yeah, exactly. You need to adjust your pressure there as well. Your bike, the tire, the air in your tires shouldn't be acting like suspension. It should be nice and smooth, nice and consistent.
I think the way they describe it is like you want to be just on the high end of float and under bounce.
Yeah, exactly. You get a good pump because you're going to be using it, right? It's a constant game of like having, I've got have enough pressure, I have too much. But ask the people you're riding with, right? Get yourself a gauge. Ask them, hey, what tire pressure are you running? Give the tires a good squeeze, and then give yours a squeeze and check your tire pressure and see if you're in that same kind of range, and then that'll give you a good gauge of where you should be, where they are, where other people are riding, some experienced riders. But tire pressure is absolutely everything.
And that's what's good too about Walden. I don't know about Kiwi, but the two groom places that we have to ride here, Kiwi and Walden will publish on their website what the recommended tire pressure is for that day. So again, if you're new and maybe you're going riding solo and you don't have somebody to gauge what they're riding, and then
Looking on the website's a good place to start.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely a great place to start. And then look behind you. Look at the ruts you're leaving, look at the terrain, and make some decisions based on that too. Don't damage the trails for other riders. That's a big thing, right? If you leave a rut, if you leave a groove in a trail, it's going to make other people's tires kind of follow that same trail, and maybe going to be some bad line choices.
And the worst thing is if you're riding on sort of a mild day, you're leaving ruts, and then it cools off, and those ruts stay until the trails get groomed.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we covered tires, we covered tubeless, we covered widths, studs, talked about pressures. Anything else to add for someone maybe thinking about getting new tires to their bike? They don't know quite what to think. Anything to add for them?
We covered a lot of ground. I don't know if I've got any more to really.
One quick tip for them. One. What's your piece of advice? Someone who wants tires.
Go to a shop and just describe, how you ride, and take the recommendations about like what kind of like about all the stuff we sort of said, right? Like describe pick a riding style, and get a tire that matches that. I think for one thing I would say for fat biking, there is no one quiver tire. If you ride your tire in the winter, you're buying a tire for that. If you ride that same fat bike in the summer, you're getting a different tire if you're riding it consistently, right? So there's no one quiver tire in fat biking. It's not like, I could make this work for everything.
No, you're absolutely right.
So get it. And the thing is, in winter riding, like what we do most of the time with our fat bikes, you're not going to have a fun time if you're riding that one quiver tire. So just get a tire that'll make you have a fun time, because it's no fun in the cold to be like...
to be struggling in the cold.
Yeah. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah. How about you, Evan?
Well, I think just to carry on from that, just pay attention to your tread pattern. Like if the majority of the riding that you're doing is going to be like in-town community type stuff, you maybe do want a tread that's a little bit more compact, a little bit smoother. But if you're going to be out, and again, this is without studs, if you're going to be out riding on trails, maybe even doing some like off-trail riding, like across lakes or something like that, you sort of maybe want a more open tread, one that has more, bigger lugs, more space between the lugs. It increases your surface area for traction. But again, like you're going to be on trails, you're going to be doing open lake riding, so speed's not going to be a concern. So, the heavier your tread, or the more open your tread is, the more rolling resistance you have. But if you're going to be riding in town and, either really hard packed stuff or sidewalks and streets, a tighter tread, less rolling resistance,
Yeah, so, it's like a mountain bike tire that way, right?
Yeah.
Like making sure you get the right tool for the job. There's definitely good fat bike tires and bad fat bike tires, and tires that work for you and don't work for you. The important thing to remember is they're expensive. Like a fat bike tire is not cheap. It's like the price of a car tire. So making sure you make that decision right the first time goes a long way. Beyond that, I think it's important to remember that fat bike tires last a long time. That is both a good thing and a bad thing. If you buy the wrong fat bike tire and you think you're just going to wear it out and then get a new one, Chapter, you're gonna be like Todd. You're gonna you'll be on your tires for 4 years, and you're gonna just upgrade them at some point because you don't want to, because you just have to, right? Because, but at the same time, if you get yourself a studded tire, if you get yourself a high-end tire, a 120 TPI, you make that jump into a good tire. You may find that you have that tire for 4 or 5 years, and when you take that budget and you spread it out over that amount of time, it's not as expensive as you think. But it's still, the tires really at the end of the day are the interface between you and the ground, and they are really the make or break between a good ride and a bad ride. So making sure that you have a proper tire on your bike, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah. For sure.
Cool. So I guess that's it, guys, for episode number 30 of the Sessions with Sessions podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. If you're listening on the old school, super old podcast platforms and not watching this on YouTube yet, I mean, hey, you can get with the times. We are on the YouTubes now. We're with all the cool kids, with all the Pauls and all those guys are on the YouTubes, right? We're the same thing.
We'll start boxing soon.
Exactly. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Whatever podcast platform you're on, make sure you guys are subscribing as well. I hear Spotify now has a rate button, so you can also rate us on there. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, guys, make sure you guys keep an eye out. We're going to be posting whenever we do a podcast. We've got some cross-country ski ones coming up, which are pretty cool. So if you have questions, please reach out. We'd love to have the questions on the podcast. We're going to start right from the basics, so to kind of bring everyone up to speed. But I guess that's it kind of from everyone over here, guys.
Yeah.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. Have a good night.
See you guys.
See ya.